Welcome back to the studio. You're watching Eye on Africa. Here are our top stories in this edition. Disappointing scores for South Africa's African National Congress. The historic anti-apartheid party lost at least one region in this week's elections. More could go to the opposition when final results are announced Saturday. They're the first verdict since the Grand Bassam massacre in March. 2 Ivorian soldiers have been sentenced to 10 years in jail in connection with the attack that left 19 people, mainly holiday-goers, dead. And reaching the end of the long road to Rio, the opening ceremony holds special meaning for a special delegation. 10 refugees will be competing under the Olympic banner, a first in the history of the Games. A blow to Nelson Mandela's party. South Africa's African National Congress, in power for the last 22 years, took a hit in Wednesday's election. It's been confirmed. Official overall results are expected Saturday evening, but on Friday, the ANC conceded defeat to the Democratic Alliance in Port Elizabeth. The city is located in the municipality of Nelson Mandela Bay, a symbolic loss for the anti-apartheid party. Mary Colmenbell has the story.
South Africa's ruling ANC party is on course to see its biggest electoral loss since the fall of apartheid. The opposition Democratic Alliance Party won southern industrial city Port Elizabeth, one of the key battlegrounds in the municipal election. Its most symbolic gain was the city's metropolitan area, named after the ruling party's founder.
We've lost Nelson Mandela Bay. We've conceded that we've lost it. And we are going to do an introspective look at ourselves. We are a party that's not going away from the political body politic of this country.
Supporters of the Democratic Alliance in Port Elizabeth celebrated the win. The party's leader said people who voted for the DA want prosperity.
If you ask people in Nelson Mandela Bay what they voted for, when you ask them at the end, they said we voted for change. I think that to me says our message got through. It says our people heard us.
On Friday, the DA looked set to create coalition governments in both Johannesburg and Pretoria, with the radical left-wing party EFF, who have won 8% of the national vote. They have now become the kingmakers for both municipalities. This is a major boost for the opposition. The DA have taken 26% of the national vote. The ANC has managed to hold on to 54% with support in rural South Africa. But urban residents say the ruling party has failed to tackle rising unemployment and a stagnant economy. President Zuma's term has been marred with a series of corruption scandals, and he now faces an uphill battle to win back support for the general election in 2019.
It's the first verdict since the Grand Bassam attack in Ivory Coast. 2 Ivorian soldiers have been given 10 years in jail for being in contact with individuals who carried out the attack that left 19 people dead in March. The shooting rampage was claimed by al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. Laurent Berstecker has the story.
A 10-year prison sentence for associating with a known terrorist organization.
Sergeants Koulibaly Zangazumana Katro and Touré Peg Brice are found guilty of the offences of criminal conspiracy and violation of instructions.
The 2 Ivorian soldiers who were arrested in July allegedly knew members of the units that carried out a deadly attack on the Grand Bassam beach resort in March. Prosecutors said the pair had lived with some of the attackers and had met with Asane Barry, the suspected driver, who is currently awaiting trial. The soldiers were sentenced for failing to warn their superiors, but are not suspected of complicity in the attack. Both have claimed their innocence, and their attorney says he intends to appeal the decision.
I'm going to file an appeal because I want this decision to be overturned with the utmost rigor by the Supreme Court. I trust the judges who made this decision, so I accept it, but I don't agree with it.
The March 13 attack, which targeted a popular tourist resort near Abidjan and left 19 people dead, was the first of its kind in Ivory Coast. Akim, al-Qaeda's branch in the Islamic Maghreb, claimed responsibility for the carnage.
Now let's take a look at what else is making headlines around the continent and accepting regional troops with no conditions. The government of South Sudan has agreed to allow a regional protection force into the country, says the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, a group that brings together 8 East African nations. Soldiers for the African Union will join a 12,000-strong UN peacekeeping force that is already in the country. Until now, the government in Juba had been opposed to African troops. At least 2 dead in protests in northern Ethiopia on Friday. Tens of thousands of the ethnic Amhara group demonstrated against the government in Gondar. The march that started from the city's court was the largest of its kind to date. Some in the Amhara community are angry at a government decision to put a local district under the administration of the neighboring Tigray region. Ethiopian authorities say at least a dozen people have been killed over the dispute in the last few weeks. The Olympic Games have yet to begin officially, at least, but Brazilian police say they've put a Moroccan athlete in jail. Hassan Saada was arrested for possibly raping 2 Brazilian women working as waitresses in the Olympic Village in Rio. The light heavyweight boxer will most likely miss his preliminary round fight scheduled for Saturday against a Turkish competitor. Election trouble in Sao Tome and Principe. The tiny island nation and popular tourist destination is holding the second round of its presidential vote this Sunday. But one of the 2 candidates, incumbent President Manuel Pinto da Costa, says he won't participate, accusing the National Electoral Commission of fraud. His rival, according to the official results of the Constitutional Court, missed winning an outright majority by 0.2%. From Sao Tome, France 24's Katerina Vertozzi reports.
Behind me is one of the final campaign rallies for the man who on Sunday will be elected Sao Tome and Principe's new president. Evaristo Carvalho is the only contender still in this race after his only competitor, the incumbent president Manuel Pinto da Costa, pulled out earlier this week. Pinto da Costa said that the electoral process had been marred by fraud and that he wouldn't take part in any poll which didn't truly reflect the will of the people. Now, hundreds of Pinto da Costa's supporters took to the streets earlier this week demanding that Sunday's vote would be cancelled. However, the country's National Election Commission has said that the poll will still go ahead. There will be 2 names on that ballot, but that any vote for Pinto da Costa will be declared a null vote, meaning that the only result from Sunday's election will be a win for Evaristo Carvalho. Now, Carvalho is the country's former prime minister. He's campaigned strongly on economic issues, which has gone down well with some voters in this tiny African archipelago, which does have high poverty levels and low rates of employment.
The opening ceremony is just hours away. Rio de Janeiro is hosting the Summer Games with 206 nations competing for gold. But the team that's getting the most attention this edition is the Refugee delegation, 10 athletes whose journeys to Rio were full of danger and uncertainty. Ketivan Gorgistani is in Rio. She reported earlier.
The goal repeated by the IOC for the presence of this team of refugees is really to bring attention to the plight of the millions of refugees around the world. It's very first in Olympic history. It's never been done. So this team will be representing a lot, a team of 10 athletes, as you said, 10 athletes from 4 different countries representing 3 sports. Among them, 8 are from Africa. There are 5 athletes from South Sudan, 1 from Ethiopia. All 6 will be competing in the track and field events. There are also 2 athletes from the Democratic Republic of Congo. These 2 athletes are judo wrestlers, and for them, it's going to be just a little bit more special to compete in these Olympics in Rio because, in a way, they will be competing at home. Yes, at home, because they have decided to seek asylum here in Brazil. It happened back in 2013, right after they finished finished competing at the Judo World Championships. For them, it's going to be very special. But of course, for all of these refugees, it will be special because they really have come a long way making it here to Rio, fleeing their war-torn country. Some of them even seeing members of their family being killed before their eyes. So really for them, and they all repeated it in press conference ahead of these Olympics, that it is really about proving that the refugees, no matter how hard their lives have been, what a big ordeal it was to make it here, they are just like every other athlete here.
They deserve a medal just for being there. That's the end of this edition. Do stay tuned. There's more news coming up on France 24.